What's up, Arc Junkies? Welcome to episode 261. Today I'm chatting with Chris Zep from the Make Everything YouTube channel. Chris makes some really cool stuff on his channel. I stumbled across his account while doing some research on how to restore an antique leg vise and got hooked on his videos. He does a little bit of everything like welding, repairs, fabrication, machining, and making. We have a great conversation about building up your tool collection, doing side jobs, and building a business. We'll get right into the show after a quick word from our supporters. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. If you're a maintenance welder, you know that making repairs is an essential part of your job. But let's face it, sometimes those repairs, they don't last as long as you'd like. That's where Rockmount comes in. Rockmount understands the importance of using high-quality welding rods and wires that can withstand the toughest conditions. That's why they offer a range of rods and wires specifically designed for maintenance welding. Rockmount's products are formulated to give the best results so you can get the job done right the first time, every time. But it's not just the quality of their product. Rockmount also believes in making it easier for their customers to get what they need. That's why you can find their full catalog of maintenance rods and wires at rockmountwelding.com. Plus, when you use ArcJunkies10 at checkout, you can save 10% on all their abrasives, burrs, bits, blades, and welding chemicals. So next time you need to make a repair, don't settle for subpar welding supplies. Choose Rockmount and weld with confidence. Make repairs that last with Rockmount Research and Alloys. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather. Based in Pasadena, Texas, Outlaw Leather is a family-owned business that provides top-quality welding and ironworking gear. They understand the unique needs of welders and iron workers, and they've developed a range of products that are both functional and affordable. Head on over to outlawleather.com. You'll find the brands you know and trust like Flange Wizard, Irwin, Empire, Snake Belly, and much more. They also offer a range of customizable gear including hoods, bolt bags, rod pouches, work belts, arm pads, and tool holders. And the best part is, all of their products are available for fast and easy shipping, so you can get what you need when you need it. And as a listener of the Arc Junkies podcast, you can save even more on your purchases. Just visit outlawleather.com and use Arc Junkies in the discount box at checkout and get 15% off all their in-stock leather goods. It's their way of saying thank you for listening and supporting the show. So don't wait. Head on over to outlawleather.com and get the gear you need to work at your best. And if you're local, be sure to stop in the storefront and say hi. Tell them the Arc Junkie sent you. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, joining me today is Chris Zep with the Make Everything Workshop YouTube channel. I almost said podcast for some reason because we were talking earlier. You said you did a podcast, but yeah, man. So welcome to the show. I wanted to get you on here because I actually found your channel because I'm restoring an old post vise or leg vise.
Oh, there you go.
And so I was looking on YouTube. I was like, okay, how do I restore this thing? Like, I didn't want to like take it apart and not be able to put it back together. Like, I'm usually pretty good about that, but I was like, man, this thing's like old. It came over on the Mayflower, so like I don't want to screw nothing up. So like I was doing a lot of research and stuff, and I came across your channel, and then I just got hooked. Like, you're doing all kinds of cool shit.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I try to do like a little bit of everything, right? That's in the name. So yeah, it's been interesting to kind of like see where the projects bring me. Like every week something different.
Yeah. Now, what's your primary background? Like, how'd you get started in whatever industry like that you're in?
So, I mean, I have a regular job, and then I have the shop as well. My background before opening the shop is as a carpenter, actually, and like a woodworker. And then I went to college. I went to an art school, and I learned sculpture and like kind of general metalwork there. Very, very, very minimal teaching in like metalworking. Like, it was a pretty basic program, like where they taught you how to gas weld. You had to learn how to gas weld before you could learn how to MIG weld, but they didn't do anything beyond MIG welding. Like, they would do some brazing if you had like some dissimilar metal kind of stuff, but it was a very like their whole thing was like they didn't want anybody to get bogged down in the technique. They just wanted them to do the bare minimum in terms of skill level to get what they wanted from a concept point of view.
We just need to stick shit together. essentially.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Which for me was like a little bit difficult because I always wanted to learn more of the skill. Like I always wanted to like push the envelope of like I want to be better at welding or I want to be better at woodworking, whatever. And the teachers like would resist me and be like, that, this isn't where you go for that. Like if you want to learn how to like weld really, really well, you should be in a trade school, you should be at an art school. So it took a little while for me to kind of get used to that. But it helped me, create the projects I wanted to create from an art perspective. And then when I got out of school, I was working as a carpenter, as like a trim guy, doing like high end homes and doing little like kind of fab stuff on the side, always doing like side jobs. And then I opened this shop 6 years ago and started taking on more like metalworking projects. And that's when I really kind of got into really like fabricating stuff with welding and steel and milling machines and stuff. And that's been the shift in focus is like people now that find me online, they think I'm a metal worker first and like a woodworker second, but it's actually the opposite. It's just I just enjoy the metal projects that much more.
Welding seems to have that effect on people.
Yeah, yeah. And so much so that like I was teaching MIG welding here at this shop a couple of years ago. Not so much, but I had sort of organized the classes and then had a friend who's like, certified welder who works for a structural company sort of running the class from a education standpoint. And I was just given like the highlights, basically a basic intro to MIG class. And it was really cool to watch their sort of like minds open when like they welded for the first time, and especially MIG welding, it's like, they would always, the question would always come up of like, okay, so like, what else do I have to do? I'd be like, no, this is it. Like if we're just sticking metal together, it can be that easy, and then you have to get better. But, obviously you can just pull the trigger and it's going to stick the metal together. And then throughout the class, they realize, the different things they did wrong or whatever. But, yeah, it's been really great. I really enjoyed it.
Now, where are you based out of?
I'm in Long Island, New York. So like about 20 miles outside New York City.
Okay. That's one area I haven't been to yet, but there's a lot of makers up your way.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people in the region and Long Island in itself, like outside of like the maker world, is like a really big industrial hub. Like you've got like Northrop Grumman here, there's like building airplanes and stuff like that, and real industrial kind of like war machine kind of factory economy here that's now pretty much gone. But we had like a huge aerospace industry. So for me, it's like a great breadbasket of old equipment, like auctions that come up here. Some of the equipment is like
insane.
Choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I scan, I'm like a big tool guy. I have, equipment. I buy and sell tools all the time. And I scan other regions and I'm like, oh my God, there might not be a place like this, so it's cool for that.
Yeah, I was talking to Adam Booth. They've got like the Flywheelers convention down here in Lakeland, Florida, which I want to try to get out to that this year. I think the one it's here like twice a year or something like that. The one event's already passed, but they said go to the one in the spring. And like supposedly that's like a massive tool deal because like down here in Florida, we don't have. I mean, like you pick up stuff here and there, but it's not like, like I see some of the guys up north, like they're pulling, like I call my uncle all the time. He's like, oh yeah, I just got a great deal on a sheet metal bender. And like, if you were closer, we could look at the freight and we could ship it down. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I don't have the space for it, but it's cool to see that, in those areas that you have access to so much equipment. Like one thing I'd love to get is like a small power hammer. Just like I said, I'm slowly getting into blacksmithing right now, and that'd be a piece that I'd love to get my hands on, something like that. But it's not something you would find commonly in the southern region. Like you got to go north of Georgia to find something.
Yeah, either that or you got to go west. You got to go like Texas, Oklahoma. Like that's where like I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Alexander Blacksmith Tools on Instagram. So Andrew has the largest anvil collection in the world. He's a big time like blacksmith tool collector, and he's like a big picker too. So he's constantly like going up into more like it's less industrial spaces. It's more like farm spaces, like where a guy had a power hammer because he was on a farm and there wasn't another shop for 100 miles, and he needed to whatever make horseshoes or brands or whatever it was. So he picks a lot of great stuff out of sort of the flat parts of the U.S. But yeah, I've actually heard that about Florida from other people that it's kind of hard to get the older industrial stuff. Like it didn't really make its way down there.
Yeah, it didn't make its way like south of Ocala, because I know Adam, he comes across some pretty good deals all the time. I see he's always picking up different pieces.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was doing a project in Florida for my day job, and anywhere I go, I'm on Facebook Marketplace, just like looking and seeing what I can find. And I remember being in I was in Jupiter and I would go back and forth to Jupiter all the time, but I always had a rental car while I was there. So I'd always be like, hey, if I found something cool, I could just hop in the rental car and go pick something up. And never really came across anything on Marketplace. I mean, up here, I could spin around and find 10 amazing used machines within like an hour of me.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a trailer today. I actually bought one of those like hydraulic drop deck trailers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen those, which like for me is like a unicorn. Like I've never seen one of those for sale used. I don't know, maybe I just get lucky.
Yeah, it's a good possibility. So when you set your shop up 6 years ago, like what did you start off with? Because I mean, you like looking at your watching the channel, looking at your shop, it's like, damn, this dude's got a lot of tools. So where did you start? Because I want people to understand that you don't necessarily like start with everything that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like going back from when I started here, I did have a small shop at my house, but like it was a 16 by 19 garage. So like you can imagine what I fit in there, right? And at the time I was doing like woodworking projects. So the most industrial machine I had in the garage was I had a mini lathe, like the little Grizzly, like literally bench top. You can like pick it up and put it on the table. So then I got the idea to start the shop, and the point actually when I started was going to be more of like a maker space. The idea was to like basically sell like almost a membership, which would be like keys to the shop. And I had kind of developed that model by talking to other maker spaces, which is like kind of like the I don't know if you've ever heard of like the Planet Fitness model, which is like Planet Fitness has a cheap membership and a ton of members that don't ever come.
Yeah.
So the idea was like, all right, well, my rent is like whatever, like $1,000 a month to start, and I can't afford it, but I found this great space and I really want the space for my own projects. If I rent 5 people at $200 a month, access to my shop, then boom, the rent is covered. And all I have to do is put up with 5 other people. So because of that, I made a significant investment, and not significant being like a couple grand, not like some of these guys, they start with $100,000 worth of tools.
Yeah.
I started with like $3,000 worth of tools, maybe. And I bought like some bigger stuff. Like I bought my table saw in the wood shop. And then I was really lucky in that my metal shop, a friend of mine had a 5x5 acorn table that was basically just taking up room in her shop. So she said, listen, if you get this out of here, you can have it. So I spent $500 on a flatbed to get it. It was all the way like closer to New York City. And luckily it was on wheels and had a flatbed guy, drag it onto his bed. And that was sort of how the welding shop started. And then I had bought a Bridgeport. A friend of mine had come across a shop that was going out in New York City, and I didn't have a shop space, but I really wanted a Bridgeport. And the deal that I made with him was he would buy it for $500, and then when he was ready to move shops, which we knew was coming, I would get it for the $500 that he spent on it. And it just having to get into this space. So I kind of like started with a pretty basic wood shop, table saw that I spent $200 on, a couple of band saws, like maybe $1,000 worth of tools in the wood shop. And then through friends and favors, maybe another $2,000 worth of tools in the metal shop. And that was it. It was like a couple of grand. And my first real welder that I bought, it was an AutoSet 212. It was a Miller AutoSet 212. And I got it in a barter with a client who I was doing woodworking stuff for. And he had bought it to have his staff learn how to weld so they could fix his trucks. He had like box trucks, and nobody ever learned how to use it. So it was sitting collecting dust, and he owed me a bunch of money. And he said, listen, why don't you make me an offer on this welder? And I said, well, you owe me like, I don't remember what he owed me. And I said, how about you just, whatever you owe me plus like $300. And he was like, oh man, that's way less than it's worth. I said, okay, that's fine. That's all I can afford. And finally he just said, you know what, you can just take it. So that was how I got my first, like, that was like my real like 220, can actually get work done kind of machine. And from there, then now it's Jesus, it's gone. I laugh at where I started versus the equipment that I have now.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've come a long way in the past 6 years. Like just watching, your videos and the access to the tooling and stuff that you have, it's just insane. Now, where did you learn how to operate like the mills and the lathes and all that for doing metal work, like threading and all that stuff?
I just learned it on my own. I bought the machines before I knew how to use them, and that's kind of the way that I've done a lot of the stuff here. It's like I had never used the Bridgeport until I owned my own and had it set up in my shop. Obviously there's trial and error. And if I put myself out there on the internet to be criticized, right? Like, and I'm not afraid of that, but obviously everybody's an expert from their couch.
Especially
So I get killed when it comes to machining on YouTube, but it's fine. I never told anybody that I was a machinist. I'm absolutely an amateur, but I really believe really heavily in being prepared for the job that you want, and my whole thing was like, I just have a love for old equipment and tools in general. I want to know how to do everything. I want to know every trade and skill. Like I want to have just a little bit of knowledge. So for me, it's like when a good deal comes up, I'm like, oh, well, I got to buy that. And so far, I mean, I've been asked a bunch of times to like value my equipment, and like 90% of it was bought used. And I mean, I'm definitely in a good position from a value versus cost perspective.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, you always want to find the deal.
Yeah, and it's it's like people, I think that like especially with tools, there's just so much value in like the day two, even like the day three sale. So like I was just talking to somebody about this recently. Like I have a big Bailey mitering bandsaw. It's a BSM 350, just like I know the number off my head. And when I bought it, I think it retailed for like $7,500, right? And I found it used for $2,000. And at the time, like I didn't have the $2,000, like straight up. Like I ran this place on the line or below it for years before it finally started making money. But I was like, you know what? Like I may never come across this machine again for $2,000. And honestly, if I turned around to sell that machine the next day after cleaning it up and listing it better, I probably could have sold it for $4,000, because like people are just bad at selling things. And not that I try to be advantageous like that, but to me, it's like that $2,000 and on a rainy day, I'll always get that back, So I never felt like even if I didn't need something, I never felt like I wasted money on any of the machinery that I have.
No, it's always an investment. And like you said, you want to be prepared for the job that you're going to get tomorrow. So now that opens up your door to do more stuff. I mean, just having access to a Bridgeport or any type of knee mill, like those things are freaking awesome. And I love them. Like I get to use them at the school all the time. I used them back when I was doing ironwork. My buddy's got one in his shop. Like that's probably not something I'm going to throw in my garage anytime soon. Yeah. But it's nice to have access to that type of equipment because it's so versatile. There's so much stuff you can do to it or with it. And like the accuracy is just insane. Like depending on what you're working on, like I always used it for like a glorified drill press, but you can do a lot of milling and all kinds of stuff with it, especially once you learn how to program it and all that.
Yeah. And if you take your time, I mean, like the thing about like machinists that I've kind of found, like machinists that criticize amateur quote unquote machinists like myself, a lot of times it's because we're doing something really inefficiently or ineffectively. But at the end of the day, like if you really take your time with a mill and you make sure that everything is tight, like that's the big thing is like if you spend the time to like fixture your part and like index it and indicate it and all that stuff, your part's going to come out just as good as, the machinist's part most of the time. But maybe it's going to take you like an entire day. That's what happens with me is like I have the mill and every now and then I get like a precise kind of job where like I have to make I do a lot of art fabricating for an art building company, and like every now and then they'll give me this like really complicated CAD drawing, and my first answer to them is always yes. Like even if I have no idea how I'm going to make it, I'm like, yeah, I got it. How you need it in a week?
Done.
No problem. Done. But then I'm like, holy crap, like how am I going to do this? And the more that I've worked on these machines, it's like when I'm done, I'm like, okay, I definitely could have given this to a CNC machinist, especially, and they would have been done in an hour. It took me all day, but like I learned so much during that process. And you have to also run your business in a way where you can afford to make a mistake and afford to like lose a brick of material and start over and not be like underwater. But it's for me, it's like I just learn by doing constantly.
Now, where did the YouTube channel come in?
So the YouTube channel wasn't part of the original sort of like business plan. The original business plan was like keep doing what I was doing, which was odd jobs here and there. At the time I wasn't getting any metalworking jobs because nobody knew me as a metalworker. It was really like woodworking stuff. And I had a really good account with a event rental company that would like hire me to build like 20 farm tables, like the kind of stuff that really like helps pay the bills. And I'm good friends with Jimmy DiResta, who's, for those that don't know, has a huge YouTube following and is kind of just like they call him the maker godfather, right?
Yeah, he's like the king of makers.
Yeah. And I was always inspired by his channel. And then the other guys on YouTube too, like I used to watch all the other kind of like maker channels. I would watch like there's a guy like I Like to Make Stuff. His name is Bob Claggett, and another guy named Izzy Swan, and all the kind of guys that were making videos 7, 8, 9 years ago, on YouTube, that's all there was when it came to like making stuff videos. So I was inspired by that. And funny enough, like one of the, like it sounds silly to say it now, but one of the drivers behind making the channel when I first started it was I was actually in Jimmy's shop and he was getting ready to move his shop from New York City to upstate New York. And he never had like a legit like welding setup in his shop in New York City. He had like a little table in like a corner of the room, and he would like, it was like sheet metal on top of wood. And I said, so what are you going to do for a welding table when you get upstate? I said, like, are you going to go get one of those big welding tables? And he said, I'm going to hit up one of those fixture table companies and see if they'll send me a table, because he was a YouTuber, right? He's like a famous YouTuber. No shit, like 2-3 weeks later, I see on his Instagram or his Snapchat, whatever it was, like two pallets with like a 4x8 fab table. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's all like, so I messaged him. I'm like, holy crap. Like, what did that cost you? He goes, no, I got it from the company. Like, and I didn't understand like sponsored, like get tools for free. So in my head, I was like, oh my God, like my biggest expense right now is tooling up my shop. Like if I make YouTube videos and I build my YouTube following, then I can eliminate that whole expense. I can just hit up companies and they'll just send me tools. At the time he had like just got a Tormach CNC and I was like, oh my God, like he got that too. Yeah. And now it's funny because, 6 years later, there's not much anybody can send me that like gets me excited. So obviously the dynamic changes and it's about making enough money to support myself. But I gotta say, I still take tools probably more than I should instead of money because I love tools so much.
It's an addiction, man. That's the next thing I was going to ask you. Are you starting your side business and your YouTube channel to support your tool addiction? Because honestly, I've done a lot of work just to be like, man, if I bid this one for $800, I can buy these 2 tools or this one tool. Yep. Like I've done a lot of work just to buy tools.
100%. And I mean, like, to me, it's the best investment I've ever made. I mean, like my tools have returned. I mean, like, shoot, much better than my stock portfolio, especially this year.
That's no
but
shit.
Like, like I bought an iron worker for $1,500. I bought an old Petting House iron worker for $1,500. That machine's probably made me 30 grand, like, and just punching holes. Like all I do is use it as like a punching unit. I just punch holes with it and I do jobs and like make brackets, whatever it is. And that machine just like keeps paying for itself. And at the time, like, it's funny because like the good times, when the times are good, right? The bad times like vanish. They just like fade away like smoke. But like, I really, I think back and reflect on the money that I laid out for machinery that I really just couldn't afford. And the thing about buying used machines and this is one of the reasons why I encourage like new kind of shops and new fabricators to buy used, is that you almost always have to buy it in cash. And I see a lot of people fall into the trap of like, just finance the machine, like finance the $10,000 machine or the $6,000 machine. It's like that payment is gonna it's gonna hurt.
It's gonna haunt you until the day that it's paid off or the repo guy shows up.
Exactly. And for me, it's like to know that like every piece of equipment in my shop is 100% mine is like, it's so relief. I feel such relief from that. It's like, yeah, maybe I had to borrow money. Like I've borrowed cash more times than I probably want to remember. I probably blocked most of them out because I was like, like I like, hit somebody up and just be like, hey, listen, like I got to buy this machine. It's like $2,000 and I have 1,500. Like, could I just borrow $500 for a week? And, I listen, you pay your debts 100%, especially when it comes like person to person. But, sometimes I would price jobs and all I would think about was like, I just did it today, actually. All I keep thinking about is, okay, the job that I'm getting paid for on Thursday paid for the machine I bought on Tuesday. And I'm cool with that. Like, I'm cool with not taking any real profit because I just wound up with another piece of equipment.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can cover your overhead and all that stuff, I mean, you can continuously buy more equipment, you can take on more and more jobs.
Exactly. And for me, it's like the ability to upgrade equipment without feeling like you're losing money on the sort of like stepping stones has also been like really important. Like, and I tell people that when it comes to used stuff, it's like, yeah, you could go buy a brand new 14-inch, Grizzly bandsaw for like $900, whatever it is, like shipped to your door. And once your business grows or your desire to do projects grows and you got to get a 20-inch bandsaw, you're not getting that $900 back that you spent on the Grizzly. But if you spend a little bit more time, a little bit more, do a little bit of, little elbow grease, clean up a $200 bandsaw. When you sell it, you're either going to break even or, maybe you'll make money. Sometimes my used equipment appreciates because of especially now with lead times and stuff.
I got a buddy that he's a Ditch Witch salesman, and he's been selling these machines for the past 2 years, but they cannot deliver anything, and they can't tell you when they're going to deliver it, and they can't tell you that it's going to be the same price, today as it is going to be the day that they deliver it. And he's still out there selling these damn things because they're in such high demand. Nobody has them. They're just waiting on the factory to pump them out.
Yeah, it's funny because like I don't have a lot of Grizzly stuff, but I do look at Grizzly as like people have their opinions about Grizzly as a manufacturer, right? Because like some of that stuff comes to your house already garbage. Like I've seen it, I've experienced it where like they're dud machines. But Grizzly's pretty good about that. Like some stuff shows up and it's just kind of like a lemon. It's like anything. But some of their stuff I think is a great value. And one of the things that I kind of every now and then I just sort of look at is like the way their prices and availability is going to kind of get like a sense of the market. So like I just the other day somebody was asking me about getting a mini mill. Like I mentioned that was like my first tool. When I bought it, I think it was like $500. I think those are like $900 right now. And I think they're like 6 weeks out. So if I wanted to turn around and sell my mini mill today for $750, I probably could get it. And I'd actually make $200 and I used the thing for the last 5 years, and made money on it. And, somebody like me who doesn't want to wait is going to just go, oh, well, I'll just buy it used. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to wait 6 weeks and I don't want to have to put it together, like all that stuff. So, I mean, I think that there's a little bit of a trap in the buying. Like I got to get new stuff, right? Like I'm opening a new shop. I got to buy brand new stuff. Obviously there's value in it, but I think that people underestimate that a little bit of searching and being a little more patient, sometimes it can really pay off.
Yeah, that's my buddy Nate Bowman. He does that, like same thing. He'll buy something and, once he buys it, he'll use it properly, take care of it, maintain it. And then he's like, okay, now I'm at a point where I can afford something else. So then he'll sell that old piece of equipment. So like you buy what you can afford now. Like, I mean, I started off with like a lot of like cheap, hardware store tools and stuff. And I've slowly replaced my arsenal. Like I'll give away those tools and buy what I can afford now because I'm in a different tax bracket now than I was, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I can start buying nicer things, but you take care of the stuff that you have, just because it was cheaper or used. Don't treat it like junk, like maintain it. And then you can sell it and get some value out of it down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because, especially because I think people see my shop and they see like the caliber of tools that I have, like in some areas, right? I have the best of the best, right? Like I have a Hyde Mech cold saw, right? It's like probably like a $8,000 cold saw. And then right next to it, I have like a Ryobi band file. And people are like, oh my God, use that like Ryobi junk. I'm like, listen, the Ryobi junk is getting the job done. If I throw it off of a ladder, 100%, it's going to just like explode into a zillion pieces. But I don't do that, unless the motor burns out. It's just as valuable to me in this moment as the big cold cutting saw, or the big bandsaw, whatever it is. And I've always found that like even cheap tools can be really useful and really like, super extend their value if you just give them a little bit of respect and don't treat them like garbage. Like I have those $20 Harbor Freight angle grinders. I don't know if you've ever bought one of those.
I haven't bought one. I've seen them.
So I have like 5 of those because when I used to teach MIG welding here, that's what the students used to use. And when I tell you those things would be running for 3 or 4 hours just nonstop. I mean, like literally, because they're slide lock grinders. So the students would turn them on and they would, hold them and they would grind their projects. We would have them make the cube, the steel cube. So, like they'd learn how to miter, weld the miters up, do the post, get everything square, and then they would grind them, make them smooth. And those grinders, man, would run like a swarm of bees for the whole day, weekend after weekend. Great. It's a horrible sound, but weekend after weekend after weekend, they would run. And I'm like, every weekend I'd be like, at the end of the class, I'd be like, all right, one of these has to be shot, right? And they still work. I still have them in the drawer, and $20 a grinder. I mean, like, come on, if you're just getting started and you treat that thing with a little bit of care and you don't like smash it around, like that $20 grinder could last you as long as it's lasted me, and you don't have to spend the extra money. I mean, listen, it's not a great machine, but if you're just getting started, like, why not?
It would not surprise me one bit, knowing what I know about the tool industry and how much rebranding and labeling and all that stuff goes on, that Milwaukee or Metabo or DeWalt is probably making the grinders for Harbor Freight. It would not surprise me in the least bit. Like I seen somebody posted something that was like a cutoff wheel, and they were like peeling the Harbor Freight label off the cutoff wheel, and it was like a DeWalt painted logo behind the sticker. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was like a major manufacturer that's reputable in our industry that's producing, a lot of the tools that's in that place.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's funny because like Harbor Freight's like another thing. And I don't know if do you buy stuff from Harbor Freight? Are you a Harbor Freight guy?
Oh yeah. No, like I go in there all the time. I'm on the rewards program. I mean, there's some good shit in there.
That's what I was going to say. And I found that recently, like I remember when I was a kid, and my dad used to get the Harbor Freight catalogs, and we used to send away for stuff. We used to buy stuff from the catalog, and like there was no website, I don't think. So you would like call and you'd say, "Oh, Dad, I want to order like one of these and one of these and one of these," and then they started opening the stores. I feel like now they're like really trying to compete. I mean, like they got all this new stuff. I saw all this stuff from SEMA, these new like jacks they're coming out with, and all this stuff where I'm like, oh man, like they want to disrupt, I think, that market share that the big companies have. Yeah. And more I see people with the drills. I've never had any of their cordless stuff. But more and more I see people with the drills, and I've got tons of their pneumatic stuff. I mean, like everybody's got a Harbor Freight, like either sprayer or an impact or something that like they just needed for one project,
Oh yeah, I bought a air over hydraulic jack from them, and we used that at the school for like 3 years to vend test coupons, and it would not stop until it did. Yeah. It like blew a seal. But I mean, they do have some pretty decent stuff. I mean, I've got several tools in my garage. But I mean, you think about, okay, what's the application? Do I trust this tool with that? Okay, maybe not. Yep. Maybe I need to buy something a little bit more heavy duty. But for the most part, I mean, they've got some pretty decent shit in there. Like if you're going to start up like a small side business, you could pick up some pretty decent stuff at Harbor Freight, save a ton of money, and then buy, what you can. Like I had to go in there because I needed an engraving tool, because I run an accredited testing facility, and part of the process is I have to transfer stamp numbers all over the material and stuff as we go through the testing process, and then once I cut it apart, I got to put that same number back on the test strip. So I had to get like a little engraver, and I want to say I have a Craftsman. I own a Craftsman one. And it was somewhere else. So I was like, okay, shit, I forgot the engraver. I just popped into Harbor Freight, picked it up. It was like $10.
I was gonna say it's like $8.99 or something
it was
like that.
It was 90% less than what I paid for my Craftsman, and it runs better than my Craftsman.
Yeah, crazy, right? Yeah. For some of those things, I'm like, and like some of my friends, like they give me shit because it's like, oh, dude, what are you doing back at Harbor Freight? Like, get out of there. But it's like, man,
I got my 20% off coupon, man. They're having a friggin' parking lot sale.
I am an Inside Track Club member.
Exactly.
I mean, they treat me different there, like, so No, it's funny too because every now and then, like I have like really limited free time because I have the shop, I do the content, and then I have a regular job. So like sometimes for me to get to the store is hard. So I'll be like, you know what? Let me just go on Amazon real quick and see if I can get something similar, right? The same stuff that's at Harbor Freight is on Amazon with a different name, and it's like 30% more because like the Amazon seller is making a little bit of money on it. So it's like the general like manufacturing and branding is rampant when it comes to all that, all those tools. And it's funny because like they're hand tools, right? They all have a lifetime warranty, which is when I was a carpenter back in the day, like I would always break their pry bars, their flat bars. And I would buy 2 flat bars at a time. I'd keep one in my truck, like brand new, and I'd keep one out with me on the field. And I'd break one of the little teeth off. And then next time I went to Harbor Freight, I'd just go up to the counter, hey, and they'd say, okay, grab another one. And that's it. And it's like the old, I don't know if you ever had a Sears near you growing up, but that's what my dad used to do at Sears. You know, like he would only buy Sears Craftsman tape measures and socket wrenches.
Yep.
Because
lifetime
his
warranty
thought was like, exactly. His thought was like this Craftsman tape measure is the only tape measure that I have to buy for like the rest of my life. And he had a couple of them, but you know, my dad was a thrifty kind of guy. He liked to get a good deal. So he would, you know, he had like a box, and like every time a Craftsman thing would break, he'd put it in the box, and then he'd, you know, get his box together. And if he was going to be near Sears, he'd bring it in. He had like a big shit-eating grin on, like so excited to get all my free stuff. And he'd come out with all brand new stuff, and he thought it was the best thing ever. And now you know, Husky's the same way. Husky's got the lifetime warranty. Like there's a lot of options out there. I don't think that there's any reason not to buy quality tools, but I think that people get bogged down in thinking they need to buy the most expensive of whatever it is.
You don't have to buy the most expensive to get started. So with the Sears tape or the Craftsman tape measures, they actually a couple years ago they started replacing them with like a red plastic shell version. So the same tape measure, you bring in the one that with the lifetime warranty, they give you this new one. The new one doesn't have a lifetime warranty. And so like they put an end to that one. But I mean, they had been around for decades. Same thing with their boots, that like their diehard boots. I had a buddy that they had like a 6-month warranty on their boots, and he did rebar work. And so he'd blow through a pair of boots in like 4 months. And so I don't think he paid for a pair of boots for like, 5-6 years until they put an end to that program.
Yeah, every 5 months, like up like clockwork, the employees would be like, "Oh, Bob's gonna come in any minute.
Yep,
come get himself a new pair of boots."
On his way home from the job site, he'd stop in, pick up a new pair of boots, back to work the next day.
Yep.
Like, damn.
Yep. I mean, listen, that's those warranties and like guarantees are put in place for 1% of people to actually take advantage of them. So I think it's good that every now and then, you know, somebody actually does. With the Husky stuff, I've had Husky wrenches and stuff break, and I'll just be like, you know what? I'll throw it in my truck. Next time I go back to Home Depot, I'll go get another one. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, lifetime warranty. Go grab another socket wrench, whatever it is. You know, the paws strip out in a wrench every now and then. It's great. It's nice to see that like that's still a thing that exists, because like everything else is so disposable and like
everything's disposable.
Generally garbage.
Like going back to like the leg vise. I mean, that thing's been around for. I mean, I guarantee it's older than I am. And
it's
like
100 years old.
Yeah.
Leg vices were made in like the early 1900s, like It's probably 1910 to 1920.
And that's something that like once I get done cleaning it up and everything, I can pass that on to my kid or my grandkid, and it's still going to work. But you go buy a tool
100%.
today, and it might last 2 to 3 years, depending on what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. Like I love the old blacksmithing tools. That's like one of my favorite things to sort of collect and also use. And I have a 400-pound anvil in my shop, and people are always like baffled by it if they don't really know tools, because like they know anvils from like Wile E. Coyote, right?
Mm.
And then, or they've seen one in like a shop, and it's like 120-pound like Wright or whatever, and then they see the 400 that I have, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like I didn't think they made anvils that big, and I'm like, in my head, I know that there's ones that go 800,000 pounds, like they're huge pieces. But what I always love to think about is like my anvil was probably made in like 1920, maybe 1930, right? Like how many generations of people have made stuff on this piece of equipment?
Yeah.
Like how many gates, how many horseshoes, like whatever it was. I don't know where mine came from. I don't know its history, but like it 100% was part of, it's a big piece. It's part of some industry that did something that must have been important. I mean, I would hope, and how many people have worked over it, and then it's never going anywhere. Like that thing is going to be around for 5 generations if I try and keep it that way.
Yeah, and they've got history to them.
Oh yeah,
that's the cool part. Is you're like, how many, like you said, how many people have worked on this? How many people have used this to to make a living? I mean, at one point that was somebody's bread and butter. Now like 100%. We're using it as like a hobbyist, or doing it to do small jobs or just tinker around and hit hot metal and shit. But like, how many people made a life, supported a family off of that piece of equipment or that tool?
Absolutely. And that's like, so I have a really rare power hammer. I know you mentioned that you want to get like a small hammer. So I have a Beaudry made a power hammer called the Peerless. And there other Beaudry is a kind of well-known power hammer brand in like blacksmithing. And if anybody watches any of the blacksmiths on YouTube, Will Stelter has a big Beaudry power hammer. And that's like the more kind of known style. But the one that I have, I just happened to come across one day on Facebook Marketplace. And as far as I know, and any of the people that I know in the circle of like kind of antique tools and blacksmithing tools, it's one of 2 or 3 known still to exist on the planet.
Damn.
So there's one other, and it's actually maybe the only one of its size that exists. So there's it's called the Beaudry Peerless. There's one other that is very well known, and but it's larger. It's a bigger hammer. It's not the same model. And I don't know the collector personally, but I know a lot of people that know him. And other than that one, there isn't a picture anywhere on the internet of another one of these hammers. There's mine and there's his. So, and the people that I've spoken to that know hammers and are involved in sort of like historical equipment have told me that they've only ever seen one other one, but they think that mine might be that one. It just might have been painted since they saw it.
Oh, wow.
So like, to me, it's like, I have maybe the last one of this hammer. The thing was made in 1908, like it's made God knows how much stuff, right? Like it used to run off of a slack belt in like probably a water mill ran shop in Boston, making, I don't know, pickaxe blades or chipping chisels, who knows? And like now to me, it's like this super valuable, just like emotional piece. I'm like, oh my God, like I got to keep this thing forever. Like this thing should go in a museum. Like people are familiar with the Little Giant power hammers, right? And they're like relatively rare, but there's a lot of them out there, like probably thousands. This might be one. I'm like, and the way I got it is like literally just a guy posted it on Facebook because he was cleaning out his shipping container and he used to use it and, kind of lost interest. So like it could have stayed in that shipping. I think he knew they had something interesting, but I don't think he knew. I mean, for what I paid like under $3,000 for it, which is like unbelievable. But I don't think he knew that it might have the only one. And I've gotten some pretty significant offers for it from people that collect hammers. And what I tell them all the same thing. I say, listen, when I'm done using it, I'll think about it, but I don't buy tools to look at them, and I don't buy tools to sell them. I buy tools because I want to use them. Yeah. Like I bought that power hammer to make stuff with, and I'm not going to go sit unused, for another 20 years. I'm going to use the shit out of it. And the beauty of it is that it can be fixed, right? Like nothing's going to happen to that hammer that hasn't happened in the last 100 years that I can't fix, Yeah.
I want to say Will Stelter, when he got his, I think it was Will or it was Alex Steele that they dropped it. Or it tipped over him and broke like the top portion of it, and they had to re-weld it and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, he dropped it wasn't his Beaudry that he dropped. He dropped a different hammer.
Okay.
And that was tragic.
I remember seeing that and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean, and even right there, like the hammer that he dropped is pretty rare. Not as rare as say mine is, but still, that's just like one less of those hammers, right? Mm-hmm. They're not making any more of them. Like there isn't like you're not calling Bailey and going like, oh, I dropped my, can we get an insurance claim on this hammer? Like I dropped it, like, they're hammer. they're just not the same. So it's just, you gotta, I think now, I think with Instagram and social media and like the discovery of these things, I feel like the interest in them is like rising up, more so than ever. Like you have more people learning about that stuff, and more people like, people like yourself, they're like, oh, I got a leg vise and I wanted to learn how to restore it. Like I think the awareness for the value of some of that old stuff is growing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I'm part of a blacksmith group down here in Florida. I mean, they've got them all across the nation and everything, but like that's the thing, is somebody will get into it and then they start tooling up. So that, I mean, that's exactly what I did. When I went and bought the leg vise, I seen like they had the world's largest antique mall, up in that area. So I popped in there and I was like, yeah, I got time to kill. I don't have anything else going on. And I probably walked that place for 3.5, 4 hours and just found, random shit, just blacksmith and stuff. Found like pair of tongs, a little coal scoop, and like some other miscellaneous shit. But then like as I finished off, there's an anvil sitting at the front, and I was like, I knew like that's what I was looking for the entire time. Like I already have an anvil, but you can never. It's like tattoos. You can never have just one. Like so, I went ahead and I picked up the other anvil that they had up there, and I was like, okay, cool. That's the one I mounted. And but I mean, there's a lot of people getting into this stuff, and like you're right. You like YouTube and Instagram and like all these different social media. They're exposing people just very similar to the welding industry. They're showing people like, hey, this is what I do, or I'm having fun doing this, or hey, I built that, and it's getting more people interested in doing that. That's the one thing that I really like about the maker community, is you guys all build like really cool shit and freely give your information. Like I got to hang out with what was it, Jimmy DiResta, Adam Booth, IC Welds, like a bunch of them over in Temple, Texas. And they had the Good to Land Fest with Justin Merlot. And so like that was the first time I got to use a power hammer. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm freaking hooked on this. And I built like a little coat hanger out of not like coat hanger like you would think, but I built like a coat hanger out of a railroad spike. And, it was just a blast. And like the whole maker community, they're not secretive. They're not hiding anything. They want to bring more people in there. Like, oh, here, let me show you how to do this. Or you're hitting it wrong, move it over here. And like, they're freaking awesome. And it's that's what we need as far as like skilled trades and all this stuff. Bring more people, get more people interested, because this stuff's a lot of fun. And if we don't do it, it's kind of a dying art.
100%. And like, I see it in like I'm involved with so many different industries, right? With like woodworking and welding, fabricating, machining. And I see it like in every industry that I've met these like really secretive, like old timers. And I'm like, dude, like, if you're not going to share the information, like why bother have it? Like what's the point? And that's one of the things that that I found to love about the maker community when I sort of joined it as a creator, right? As like a YouTuber, was like everybody else was giving away all this information. So my thought was like, I'll give it away too, right? And then as I started doing more like metalworking projects, I started to talk a little bit more about like the business of doing welding projects, even as like I wouldn't call myself a professional in the welding world, right? Like I'm most people are, they have a BOCES training or a trade school training, and they're a structural welder or whatever, right? Like I was a decorative artistic welder before I did anything that had any real like utility, right? Like before I started making like carts and whatever else. But then what I found was like I could make, one of my videos that did really well on my channel was like how do I make money with my welder. And it's a video where I'm making like it's 2x2 angle, and I'm making carts for a catering company that would hold their like the ovens that they bring when they do like an on-site catering, right? So super simple. Anybody with a 140 MIG welder and a angle grinder could have done this project, right? And I'm not putting up a building. I'm not telling anybody, hey guys, like just go buy a welder and you could go like put columns in the next general contractor's house. The point of the video was like, hey, I'm what I would call like one level above amateur at that point as a welder. But here's a job that I'm going to make X amount of money on. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to take my time. And I know that the welds I'm doing in this application are going to be sufficient, right? Maybe they're not going to be the prettiest, but that's what the angle grinder was for at that time, And at the end of the day, the client was happy. I made money, and I was able to like learn more about my skill and get better while I was, charging to do it. And like, I think that resonated with a lot of people that are like, hey, I never thought I could do. I weld at my house, or I do metalworking for myself, and I never really thought I could charge anybody to do anything. And I tell like baby steps, right? You fix a wheelbarrow for a guy. You know how many freaking hand trucks I've welded? How many hand trucks I have welded for people that are like, I just don't want to buy a new one. Like, okay, well, if you weld enough broken stuff, you learn, to me at least, I learned so much about like what works and what didn't work.
Yeah, because now you know what not to do, because whoever did it before you, that failed. So we'll rip that right out of the playbook.
Yeah, and like one of the things that I'm sure, like as someone that's involved in welding education, that you see, that I saw a lot, was like just where the weld was situated on the joint, right? So if it was like a fillet weld, right? Having it just be more partial to one piece of material than, right? And then all that weld is sitting on the one piece, and then the weld fails at like the vertical joint. And learning like, okay, well, I got to make sure I don't ever do that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And then supplementing all that with taking some classes and learning from my friends that are spot welders. And then honestly, Jody from Welding Tips and Tricks is like the mentor of my welding knowledge on YouTube, by watching him do his videos. And Jody's become a friend of mine that I met through this kind of community.
He's taught a lot of people how to weld.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I'll watch his videos on stuff that, in my head, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what to do. Like he just did a video recently about, I think it was the effect of slag versus a clean weld on like a 90-degree joint. Just watching that video, I'm like, okay, like, learning a little bit from him, and just constantly having like the access to it's like continuing ed, but it's free.
Yeah.
Like every week, Jody's going to put out a new video on something that's going to teach you. And maybe you're never going to do whatever it is he's talking about. Maybe you will. I don't know.
It's possible. I mean, the possibility is always there. I mean, especially if you're getting into this type of work.
Of course. And, for me, it's like, it's totally opened up my business. Like just being able to stick pieces of metal together, and then obviously expanding my skills and like, trying to be a better TIG welder. Right. So like practicing as much as I possibly can, and spending the time when I'm not making content, just sitting down and like, I'm not a stick welder. I never learned how to stick weld. And lately I've been trying to learn it. So like every now and then on a Saturday when I have some time, I just go out into my yard, and I'll just put two pieces in a vise, and I'll just weld like, a vertical seam, or a horizontal seam, or I'll try to get underneath and weld upside down just to burn through some rod and like just get better.
That's what it's all about.
I think
it's just repetition.
Super important. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I meet like I have a plasma table here. I have a 4 foot by 4 foot Torchmate. So anytime I meet somebody in like the heavy construction industry, or anybody I think could like use that as a resource, I always say to them like, hey, like the other day, a guy with a bunch of dumpsters, he dropped a container off of my house, and the thing was like riddled with holes. I mean, it was like just falling apart. And I said, dude, I have like a metal cutting table, like a CNC plasma table. If you ever need like plates cut or anything, like anything fab, like just let me know. I'd be happy to like, just patch dumpsters in trade. Just to every now and then I need a container. Like I would do the work, and he'll give me a container for the day. And he goes, no, like I got it. I said, all right. And he said, what kind of welding you do? I said, oh, MIG and TIG. And he goes, I don't do any of that. He goes, I'm a stick guy. I said, all right, that's cool. He goes, I never liked MIG or TIG. I said, well, how about this? One day you come to my shop and you spend a day teaching me how to stick weld. I said, the way that like I want you to spend a day with me and give me that information. I said, and when was the last time you used like a modern MIG machine? He's like, I haven't used one in years. I go, I have a feeling that they're better now than they were then.
Oh yeah.
I said, and I think if you use I have a 360 MP, a Lincoln 360 MP. I go, I think if you use my new machine, I think you might have a better time.
Yeah, you're probably going to change your tune.
Exactly. So, but like to me, it's like that's worth its weight in gold. I mean, like if I can convince that guy to come down here and spend a day with me, just going over the little tips and tricks that he's learned in a lifetime of like welding he welds for the railroad here. Like maybe I'll pick up some bad habits. I'm undoubtedly I'll pick up some bad habits, but I'll learn like so much just spending a day with him. And I think that for me, like watching everybody else get better through like social media encourages each other. And I feel like right now we're in a great time for that.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Everlast Welders. They just released the all-new Typhoon. It's a badass stick and TIG machine packed full of advanced features and functions, including all new industry-first waveforms. The Typhoon is available in 230 amp or a 325 amp version. Both feature a 7-inch high-def colored user interface screen, AC and DC stick and TIG capabilities, pulse adjustment, and 5 AC waveforms. The Typhoon is available right now for pre-orders at everlastwelders.com. And as always, be sure to use code word ARCJunkies in the comment section at checkout and get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools, makers of my favorite welding tables and fabrication tools. And right now, listeners of the Arc Junkies can save 10% on select Strong Hand tables and 5% off on their 5/8 tool packs when you go to stronghandtools.com/promo. Strong Hand has the tools and tables to help you increase speed and accuracy on all your builds. So check them out today and save at stronghandtools.com/promo. Now let's get back into the show. Yeah, because I mean, it's everywhere. It's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's TikTok, it's all over the place. I mean, you have access to all this information. You got all these people on there that are like, hey, this is what I'm building today. Oh, I screwed that up. Let me show you how to fix that. And I mean, there's so much, like I said, I was looking at repairing a leg vise and you know, same thing. I tuned into the Essential Craftsman. I was like, what's the best way to, you know, build a stand for my anvil? Do I want like a metal stand? Cause I can build that. Or should I do it, you know, on a stump, or, you know, how should I mount it? And like going through all this stuff. And like, I started watching his channel and I was like, yeah, okay, here's how I'm going to do it. You know, so just having access to that information, because like every once in a while I'll get burned out on welding. I don't want to watch welding videos. I want to like make something and I'm not sure how to start that whole project. Like I got enough tools in the garage to be able to start it. I just got to figure out, you know, I need like a little push, you know, a little inspiration. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great to have that on there. And then sometimes I'll just be scrolling through, you know, Instagram and be like, oh, that's freaking cool. I could use that around the house. I'm going to build that. So, I mean, it's really cool to like fill in, you know, especially if you got dead time or free time, you don't have nothing to do and you got a shop full of tools and material, go out there and build something.
Yep, absolutely. And so much of like, for me, having the shop, it's like, the shop is like a lifelong series of projects in itself. Like I've been trying to build a clamp rack for my fixture table for like a year. And I finally got to the point where I've cut all the material now. But it's like every time I go to start it, I'm like, I have something else that I really need to get done. I have something else I really need to get done. It's like you could probably see behind me in the video, like there's 2 levels of racks on the wall.
Yeah.
That second level, all that material was on the floor for like 6 months. And I was just tripping over it because I knew the rack that I had couldn't hold it. And it's like, okay, well, how do I build a rack? What's the most efficient way to do it? I buy 24-foot sticks. Where's it gonna go? You know, how am I gonna get the material in the shop? And like all of that little like problem solving, you know, having a shop is like the best thing for that. And going back to what you said about like, you know, seeing everything on Instagram and YouTube and all those things. It's funny because I feel like right now, like the argument is that social media is like a waste of time for so many people, right? But I just think that I feel like makers and fabricators and people that are creative, I feel like Instagram is the opposite of a waste of time, because I feel like the time I spend on Instagram and YouTube is like so productive to me.
Yeah, I think it really depends on who you follow, because you can get onto like, there's some like mind-numbing shit on there that you got to filter through. But well, like once the algorithm kicks in, it's like, oh, welding, blacksmithing, woodworking, carpentry,
machining,
like, machining, like all that stuff, electrical, like all that stuff pops up. Okay, now I'm being productive.
Yeah. And then there'll be like a cat video in between all those videos. But, you know, listen, every now and then you need a break. But to me, it's like I was having a conversation with like kind of a person outside of the social media generation, like a while back. And he was talking about he was getting into Westphalias. You know what a Westphalia is? The like Volkswagen. Westphalia is like the Volkswagen camper. Okay. They're like from the 80s, and like the top pops up.
Yeah.
And they have like a real stubby front, motors in the back. And he's like, oh man, I'm like really into Westphalias. Like they call them Westies. He's like, I'm really into Westies. Like I really want to get one, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'm in this forum and it's like so great. Like I'm reading about everybody's builds. And I go, well, dude, do you have an Instagram? He's like, yeah, I have one, but I don't use it. I said, well, but why don't you use your Instagram to like learn more about this car? He's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to post anything. I'm like, dude, you don't have to post anything. So I go on his Instagram and I just type in Westphalia in the search, and I do like hashtag Westphalia, and I just follow like the first like 20 accounts. And now his feed is only these cars. And he's like, dude, oh my God, he's sending me stuff on Instagram. He's like, dude, look at the way the guy did this. And I'm like, yeah, your whole world was limited to like the forum that you found, which is like mostly text, which for me, like personally, I'm a visual learner.
Yeah,
and
I don't get down with forums. I can't.
No, I can't. I can't, especially like the really long post of like my build, you know, and it's like a master's thesis. Like, give me a 2-minute video, and I'm there.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm a visual learner. So like Instagram is like it's the dream. You know, like I bought this trailer today, this drop deck trailer. First thing I did was type in the trailer manufacturer on Instagram and their hashtag, and now I'm looking at everybody else that has one, and like what problems they've had, what modifications that they've done. Like I'm not on some it's Triple L is the manufacturer. I'm not on some like Triple L forum, you know, looking at posts from 2015. You know, like I'm looking at pictures that some guy uploaded yesterday, and I can DM that guy and go, hey man, like I just bought a trailer just like yours. Like my bearing is broken. Like, you know, like how did you fix it? And right away, like me and that person are connected on something. Like I have no idea what some of these people do. We're never going to meet. We're not friends, but maybe that guy has information for me. Maybe I have information for him. Like to me, it's like this great connector, an intellectual connector.
Yeah, I mean, awesome. It's almost like the. I mean, you think about it, technologically speaking, it's almost like the invention of the internet. Now that you have access to this, because like I'm the same way. Like I've researched stuff, and you pop up on a forum, and you're like, okay, no, this isn't. I mean, the answer's in there somewhere. But I'm not going to filter through the last 3 years of freaking comments and like reposting the original. You know, like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But
message the guy who hasn't been on the forum since 2011.
Probably
like,
change
hey,
emails.
Man, yeah.
Yeah, but
hey,
I
you
can
send me those pictures that aren't hosted anymore.
Exactly.
I really need to see.
I can like just type the same thing into YouTube or Instagram and like boom, there it is. You know, and somebody's got an answer. And like you said, you can actually reach out and talk to that person directly. I don't have to, you know, respond in a forum, wait till he gets the email, and then he decides whether or not he wants to respond back to it.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. So there's a guy on Instagram who he buys and sells a lot of machinery at auctions. His Instagram is Another Home Shop Guy. And you got to follow this guy. He is Jeff. We've never met in person, but we talk on Instagram all the time. He's in California. The guy has like a regular suburban house, literally packed to the ceiling, his garage, with like big machines, like big, like heavy 3,000-pound lathes, like Monarch 10EE, like 5,000-pound machines. And then his driveway, all the machines that he can't fit in the garage, just covered in tarps. It's like hysterical. And he lives in like a regular suburban, like Southern California neighborhood. And I bought a lathe that I didn't know a lot about, and he happened to have like a very similar or the same lathe. So we get to talking, and you know, his machine has this contactor that my machine doesn't, and then you know we're talking about that, and like I found him by searching like the hashtag and then the lathe that I bought, and then we've now become friends, and now I'm going to be redoing like the spindle on my lathe, and he's already done it on his machine. So when I go to do that, I like posted on my Instagram, I said, you know, Jeff doesn't realize that he's going to help me virtually redo the spindle on my lathe because he's done it. And he's like, dude, anything you need, you know, like, where was I going to meet this guy?
Yeah, where else are you going to get access to that information?
Yeah. And not only that, like, if I have a question, I could like video chat him from California, and he's going to say, oh no, you got to like do this or do that. To me, I'm like, this is like the dream.
Huge
I mean, what a time to have access to this, you know, like otherwise the lathe that I have who knows, maybe it would wound up in the scrap because I couldn't figure out how to, you know, wire it right or whatever. But now I you know, you got this access to these people. And then the double win for me, at least, is I get to make a YouTube video about the experience now. And now anybody else coming along behind me in my shadow will get to watch my video and go, oh, like perfect. That's where this guy bought the spindle bearings. And I'll, you know, I try to make my videos, and I'm sure everybody's gone down the YouTube rabbit hole and they find a really informative video with like no actual information in like the description. You know, like, oh, I ordered all these parts online, but the guy never says the name of the website.
Yeah.
And you're like, ah! Like, damn it. But I try to be really thorough in providing all that information in like the description of the video.
Okay,
So
so you
like
drop all the different links and resources and stuff down in the description.
exactly, like, here's where I got this, here's where I got that, like, and then if I get comments that are saying like, oh, that link, isn't working anymore, I'll try to go back and, find, okay, well, the website I was using, whatever, they changed or it's gone or whatever. So I really, the goal for me with YouTube was always to provide as much value as I could, but also like have fun. I don't want to just be like a teacher in front of a whiteboard and being like, okay, like here's how I'm going to do my thing. Like I want the videos to be enjoyable and I want people to feel like they got something out of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you plan like what videos you're going to do, or like how do you plan your content or create your content, or come up with a list of stuff you're going to build or fix or repair, restore?
It kind of like comes up naturally. It's interesting because I never really have like a break where there's nothing to do. Cause like even when there's no projects, so my videos are a mix of client work that I film and then like turn into just a video. Oh, here I'm making this thing for this person, or just personal projects. And then the restorations is really just like I have endless shit to restore here. Speaking of blacksmithing, I have like a really nice swage block outside and it's broken clear in half. And one of the things that like it's nagging me because I want to do it is like I really want to nickel rod weld it back together because it's cast iron. And for me, it's like I get a couple of things out of that. Like first and foremost, I get a swage block because I'm going to have welded this thing back together. Secondly, I get the experience of like it's a bunch of welding and it's deep, because the swage block is pretty
it's going to
deep.
be
So
a lot of freaking welding.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of welding. I'm going to have to try to keep it hot. I'm going to have to try to cool it slowly. Like, and no one ever taught me how to weld with nickel rod. I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate, and I'm always very thankful to Lincoln Electric, who's a sponsor of mine. They sent me a tube of Tech Rod 99, and I spent like 5 or 10 minutes on the phone with one of their more like technological people, and he said, okay, like he said, oh, Tech Rod 99, what are you welding? I said cast iron. He said, okay, and he gave some pointers, right? Heat it up, keep it hot, blah blah blah. So that's the only information I have. So for me, I'm just like going in totally blind and I'm just going to figure it out. Now, if it turns out great, for me, it's going to be like a great win and I'm going to film it and everybody on the internet's going to think like, wow, this guy must know what he's doing. If I wreck it, the video is still going to come out, but the video is going to be now about like, okay, who am I going to call to help me fix this? Like, who's going to be the first person that I message? Like, will it be Jody? Like, will it be like a JD Brewer Apex Welding? Who's like a really experienced guy who I've become friends with, like who's going to be the first person that I ask? And then in the video, I'll explain like, okay, I cracked this thing. Every weld cracked, so I called so-and-so and they told me, oh, well, you got to heat it up. So everybody gets to learn with me. Lincoln gets to see me using their products. And at the end, I get a new swage block, that's all nickel welded together. It'll be nice and shiny where those nickel welds are, I'll clean them up nice.
Yeah. That stuff, it welds like mud. You're going to notice in the puddle, it's going to be a lot thicker than what you're used to working with.
Mm-hmm. And I did it once before on the tail of a vise. And again, like just guessed my way through it. I made some mistakes. I had some pitting and, then I watched maybe it was a Bob Moffat video. Maybe somebody had a video, like a really good nickel rod video on YouTube. Of course I waited until after I did the welding to watch the video like a dumbass, but I think that's sometimes what you do. But like, so just, I mean, that's like a long way around of saying like, I have more projects than I could do in a lifetime here. And, sometimes things come up and I get particularly excited and then everything else gets like pushed to the side, So, one of the next projects I have that I'm really excited about for a couple of reasons is, I just got a Ranger from Lincoln,
330 MPX. Yeah.
330 MPX. And I'm going to build a kind of a little bit different laid out welding skid. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a welding skid that can go on a small trailer and kind of like pin into a trailer, but also go in the back of my truck and come in and out with my forklift, up, I have a property in upstate New York so that I can, not always have to be dragging a trailer. I don't have a pickup truck, so I can't keep the welder, out and run off of like the back of a rig. but I want to be able to do more mobile welding work. I want to be able to do more heavy kind of steel work. And, that's one of the things I really want to get into. But for me, it's funny. Most people would be excited to like, oh my God, I have a 338X. Now I can do, the structural steel work. I'm so excited to build the skid. Like, I can't wait to get the skid. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like setting up your truck the first time. Like, I can't wait to get the skid all done. Like, and it's funny. I got 150 feet of lead. I got everything. I own everything that I need, but I just haven't had the time to build the skid, and now I'm like super excited to get that going so that I can take on the next project. You know?
Check out Illuma on Instagram. They build like these high quality skids and stuff. Randy's like super cool dude. But yeah, they've got some great ideas on like exactly how to set everything up, and I mean you can probably pull a lot of information off that.
Oh yeah, I've definitely poached the Illuma skid designs for some of the design on mine, and it's like everybody's setup is different, right? Like I don't do a lot of cutting, I don't do a lot of torch cutting in the field. Like I rarely come across an instance where I need to torch cut stuff. So like I'm not setting. Most of the guys that are building like a welding rig, right? Like their torch setup is a big part of it. Like having bottles. So I'm making room for bottles for sure, but at the end of the day, like the structural welding, and whenever I have to do anything like that, I actually have my friend who's the certified welder come in and do it. I just basically I'm his helper. I set up the machine, I get everything there, and then he does, and it just makes me feel a little bit better. But for that, we're going to be running off of leads. He's going to be, I have a lot of 7018. That's kind of what I've learned on, and I know he likes to use it. So we'll stick weld what we have to stick weld, and the little skid will be set up kind of specific for that. And I'm sure when I post it online, some people will say like, oh, you're missing this, or, oh, you really want to have a compressor or something like that. But it'll be perfect for me, and that'll be it.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what you're building it for. You're building it for you, and you don't necessarily need everything that, like a pipeline guy is going to need or a structural guy is going to need, because you're going to build it for the type of work that you do and the environments that you're working at. That's the cool part about it, is you can build it as custom as you want to fit exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like figuring it and like going through everything is like, that's part of the fun for me. Right. And then when I make the video and share it with people, like no doubt in my mind, someone will watch it and go, oh man, like, cause it's a small skid. It's going to be 3x5. So like undoubtedly somebody's going to watch it and go like, oh man, like you fit a lot on that 3x5 skid. Like that inspires me that I don't need to fill the whole back of my truck with equipment. Like if you tighten it up, like the way that I'm doing it is I have like an extension cord reel and and another reel that I'm putting on their sides underneath a toolbox. So I like jacked up a toolbox on lifters so that instead of the reels taking up, I mean, my welding leads are on I don't remember the name of the reels that I got. But I didn't get Illuma reels. I couldn't afford them. I bought a different reel kit for the leads. Those are standing up, but like I hadn't seen anybody's kind of skid where the extension cord reel or whatever else was on its side underneath the toolbox. So that's just like maximizing the space. And someone will undoubtedly tell me that I'm an idiot online, but somebody else will undoubtedly say like, oh, that was a good idea. And like that's the comment that I read. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm glad I made that person glad I made that person happy.
Yeah, I mean, you're inspiring somebody. I mean, at the end of the day, like there's trolls everywhere you go, and you just write them off. They had a bad day, they had a rough life, they got to take it out on somebody.
My buddy who does more furniture stuff. He posted a video on his Facebook of him like just welding an inside corner, and he writes like haven't welded in a while. What do you think? And I text him, I'm like, dude, you are bold. Because and it was on Facebook. I go, you're asking Facebook.
You don't want to put anything on Facebook.
My God, the comments, man. You would think that everybody was an inspector and everybody had like.
Oh, they're all keyboard CWIs.
They all X-rayed it from their house. They all know that like, the freaking leg of the chair that he was building is like, it's going to just explode and, a school bus full of children are going to die. And it was like, I mean, from anybody's eyes, it was like a great looking weld. Like maybe it was a little cold, right? But the people just tore him apart. And I'm like, man, like everybody, why it's and you might notice it too in welding in particular. People have a lot to say about everybody else's welds.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty cutthroat industry at times.
It's really
But
tough. And listen,
Facebook is like
sometimes
the elephant graveyard from Lion King. We must never go there, Simba.
seriously, just never read the comments. Every now and then though, I love that like rating welds at the water park. You ever seen those? Where like a guy will like, so it'll be like a welder.
I've seen
post,
random
like,
random people doing that.
Yeah. Or yeah, maybe random people, but I'll see it like at Disneyland, like rating welds at Disneyland. And like some of them are like missed completely, like big gap between like a railing and a staircase tread or something. And I'm always like, oh my God. Every now and then, I mean, listen, every now and then, I don't care how good of a fabricator, a woodworker, or a welder, every now and then you do something that's not the best and you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So every now and then I'll do a weld and I'll like send a picture to my buddy who's like the welder that I know. And I'll be like, I don't know, boss, what do you think? And he'll just send me back like a thumbs down. And I'm like, all right, cool. Thought so. Cut it out. It's like, all right, fine. Listen, you learn. Somebody's got to teach you what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I'm a huge stickler for that. But I think that's just ingrained in welders once they learn how to weld and once they learn how to interpret like what a good weld is, no matter where they go, they're picking out welds. And like every weld they're looking at. And my wife gives me shit about it all the time. She's like, "What? You're over there looking at welds again, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see how my work stacks up against somebody else's." Or like, why did they leave it like this? Why didn't you just take the grinder and cut it out and redo it? Like, why would, especially in a public setting, like, why would you do this?
Yeah. What kind of hurry were you in?
Exactly.
What kind of hurry?
It's a Friday weld.
Like, I was gonna say Friday at 3:00. Like everybody else is already on their way back to the truck, and you're the last guy there. And and you just get it done and get out.
Looks good from my house.
Exactly, right? Or it's your last day in town and you're like, forget it. I'll just get this one done.
Or you're dragging up anyway.
Yep. It's funny. There's like, I think that being exposed to some of the criticism is good. And I'm not such a stickler with like I'm not such a stickler with the welding stuff because I don't know as much about it, but I'll tell you this, like I'm on a project in New Jersey where we had to have all the dunnage on the roof welded on site and, it all had to be inspected and yada, yada, yada. And everything got inspected. Everything's, attested. Everything's perfect. Right. But the freaking welders left all their, I'm sure there's a slang name for it that I don't know, but the very end of the stick.
Yeah. The weld stubs.
All over the damn roof. So I go to the contractor and I'm like, because the contractor hired the welder. I'm the project manager for the building. And I'm like, man, we got a rubber roof here. Like, I don't care how good of a job they did on the welding. One of these stubs goes through the roof and now I got a leak. Like, come on, and who's like, what kind of tradesman can't clean up after themselves? Like who finishes the stick? Well, that's true. Any electricians listening, I don't know. There's something wrong with them. And I guess maybe the welders felt like electricians because they had all that electricity running through the stick at that point. But I was walking around. I'm like, oh, these guys did a nice job on the fabricating. They had to cut some expanded metal. They had to make a railing. I'm like, oh, okay, like looks pretty good. Like, they spaced all the railings. They spaced all the verticals even though they had to cut it. Like they did nice. And then I see all the freaking remnants of the sticks. I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, I was so impressed until I was like super disappointed. Leaving the bucket full of stubs on the roof, I would have been fine with because that could have been oversight. Like, oh shit, we left the garbage in the bucket on the roof. But leaving the damn things all over the roof, I was like,
Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of iron workers. Just throw it. Just wherever it's at. You just squeeze the stinger and let it drop.
Exactly. Like, come on, keep going. We got to get out of here. It's windy up here. I think they did it in the winter, so it was probably pretty cold.
Oh, that sucks.
But anyway, I mean, listen, everybody's got their things that they're gonna be hypercritical about doing a great job on, and there's always going to be something that somebody's going to be like, that's not that important to me.
Yeah, but I think that's part of like part of being a craftsman is like, and I always told my students, like, when you get done with your weld, like clean up your area, like clean up all the rod stubs, clean up the slag, clean your welds up, hit it with a wire brush before the inspector gets there. If they walk up there and like you got your shit together, like everything's nice and clean and tidy, I mean, they're not going to start nitpicking because, oh, this guy's a professional, or that, this person, that like they do good work, and they're not going to be so critical. I mean, they're going to start looking, obviously, they're going to measure everything. But if you got like stuff laid out and it just looks like a damn rat's nest, it's like a first impression. So, I mean,
Of course.
you kind of want to make a good first impression on like the inspectors, the superintendents that are coming through, the client, if you're out there, you want to start your own business, you think you're going to leave that and they're downstairs, while you're working on their staircase, you're just going to start dropping rod stubs everywhere or, piece of TIG wire. No, you're going to clean up after yourself.
Absolutely. I just put a video on my channel about like a small TIG welding job that I did. I like welded some railings, and basically like what I talked about was kind of, my day rate for like in the shop, whatever. And basically how I charged $2,000 for what was like 6 welds in the field and I guess like 6 welds in the shop, right? Like I welded an escutcheon plate, whatever. And one of the things that I kind of focus on in the video is the amount of protection I did in the client's house, like going to the hardware store and spending like $15 on plastic drop cloths that I was going to throw away an hour later, just because like I knew I was going to be grinding in the guy's house. And all I need is a little bit of that carbon steel dust to wind up underneath my boots and then in the finished floor, and then gets wet and rust. And the client's calling me and going, "Hey, you're the only guy that was here working on metal. And now I got, rust stains in my
rust stains
polyurethane."
all over everything.
Exactly. So it's like, that little extra time, not only, obviously it saves me money, right? Because I don't have to have the dreaded callback, but, walking out of that space as though I like snapped my fingers and the railings were put back together is my goal. Like, I don't want anyone to know I was there except, oh, look, the railings are done.
Yeah.
Like no other evidence, burn marks, like nothing that's going to make anybody think that I did a sloppy job or I was rushing. Like blue tape. I always tell people blue tape is your friend. If you ever mask something off, even just so you don't put a handprint on it. Like I'm a big fan of like, I wear rubber gloves probably more than I have to with client work, because like I can't tell you how many times I've watched a guy go around a corner and grab like a door jamb and just leave like 4 black fingerprints. Yeah. And like, even if it scrubs right off, the client's going to think like their house is haunted. Like, what the hell? Like, how dirty was this guy that he just like grazed my door and left this mark? Yeah. And it's like, all those little things, like just wearing, and I know like, especially in like the metal industry, like a lot of guys don't wind up inside a lot of houses, but like even just like having booties, having rubber gloves, having clean pants, like all those little things. It's like I clean the wheels of my, anytime I bring a cart in somebody's house, I always like clean the wheels, because you bring in all the dirt and grime and the little grit that like scratches people's floors. Like one scratched client's floor can like kill your whole business.
Well, yeah, and you're not going to get a call back. But I mean, I think going the extra mile and taking all the precautions you do, when you set things up, like I was the same way, like when I was running my mobile business, like I'd put out fire blankets and all that stuff. Like I don't want to burn anybody's balconies, or like, you start welding near a glass window, you get weld sparks on a glass window. It's done. So that's like taping all that stuff off, taking the extra bit of precaution that's going to get you a call back, on the next job, because people know that, okay, like when he's here, he's protecting everything, taking care of it. He's not tearing anything up. You're not causing any back charges while you're on site doing the work.
Yeah.
And it looks professional.
Absolutely. The job that I just did these railings on, I had to fabricate these steel kind of like mending plates, and they had to go up in this vaulted spire. And they basically were like kind of caps over like a rafter tail so that it would look decorative. So I made them out of 1/4-inch plate. They were just drilled and countersunk and basically just got screwed on. And the client asked me if I would install them. And I said, like, I really don't want to install them because like it's very close to the window. And the way that they had made some plywood mending plates temporarily, and those had to be removed. And as soon as I saw the plywood ones, I thought like, those are going to be tough to get out. And I thought, like, if I try to take those out and I cause damage, the whole thing's going to be my fault. The guy's not going to care that the old plywood was wedged in there. He's just going to care that his window's broken. Mm-hmm. And what do you know? The guys that put the wood in and then he had install my metal plates broke one of the windows because he was, I don't know what happened. I mean, according to the client, his response was, oh, the guy wasn't paying attention and he broke a window. What an idiot. Who knows? The guy could have been being so careful and just at the last second slipped and just, the corner of his flat bar might have hit that window. But you're talking about a triangular skylight in a spire. That had to be a very
That's
expensive
an expensive
window.
piece of glass. Yeah.
And all I kept thinking was like, I wasn't happy that somebody broke his window, but I was sure as hell happy that it wasn't me.
Yeah. Right.
And I was like, man, like every now and then I make the right call. And that was the right call. Like, not touching those brackets. So it's like, I think if I've learned anything from working in people's houses is learning what to say no to, even if it seems easy and even if it seems simple. Sometimes there are certain things that you just want to leave alone and say, I don't feel comfortable. Like I have no shame in telling somebody I don't feel comfortable doing something anymore.
Yeah. You look at it and say, yeah, that's not my problem. I'll pass on that one.
The best thing that I've learned to say is I'm not insured for that. And people don't argue with that. Because if you tell someone, I really don't feel comfortable, sometimes a pushy client will be like, oh, come on. It's no big deal.
Yeah,
like,
it'll take you 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll help you. That's the worst one.
Yeah.
then you know to stay away.
I'll help you means you go to the car and you just drive away. You just adios, lose my number. But, I've said to clients before, like, oh, yeah, sorry, I'm not insured for that. I can't do it. God forbid something goes wrong. It's going to be me against you. And I really don't want to put myself in that position. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for somebody to argue with that. It's hard for somebody to argue with like, oh, like first of all, you have insurance? Like, okay. The last guy didn't,
Right.
And okay, like I can understand, like, you don't want to do anything that's outside your realm of liability.
No, that makes perfect. That's a good way to put it too with the client. Just like, yeah, I'm not insured for that.
Not insured for that. Sorry. Yeah. It's like if you're welding outside and the guy says, hey, could you come inside and weld something for me? And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not insured for that.
Yeah, my insurance stops at the threshold of the front door. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, seriously. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't have to be true, but your client almost definitely doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a safe and benign way, at least I've found, to get out of doing that. And one of the things that I tried to do in the shop is, I really try to avoid doing any installation work now. It's really like, I mean, and if anybody's ever done it, just loading the damn truck.
It's cumbersome.
And oh my God. I mean, just I was joking in the video with that I just put out, right? Like I had almost an entire truck full of stuff to do 6 welds because I got the TIG machine, I got the grinder, the blanket, the bandsaw, all the different grinders to fix everything. The blankets, all those different stuff, the material itself, which I had already fabricated in the shop. I had to wrap all in blankets. It was like 10 trips up and down the stairs with all this stuff. And I'm like, God damn. So normally I tell clients, like, I'm happy to fabricate, I'm happy to drop off, but that's it. Like, here you go. Here's your plates, here's your pieces, and you got to have somebody else install it. Call your general contractor.
Yeah, that was always the biggest thing about like working out in the field is it always takes longer to set up than it does to actually do the work. I mean, you got like an hour and a half of setting up and everything, and you go in there and do a 2-inch weld. But that's the only way 100%. To get it done is to do the damn weld. But like all the shit you got to bring out the welder, then you got to bring out the leads, then you got to fire up the generator, and then you got to bring out the grinder, like all this stuff, like you were saying. And like leaving the house, like, the night before I'm doing a mental checklist. Okay, I got to grab this, that's sitting over there. Like, and I'll pre-stage shit just so I don't forget it. Because once you get out there, it's like the last thing you want to do while you're on the clock making money for yourself is like, shit, now I got to go to Home Depot. Okay, it's a 30-minute ride out, and then, 10 minutes, 20 minutes walk around the store. Hopefully they have it, and then 30 minutes back. Like, okay, now I've got an hour wasted, but I don't trust any of the other contractors out here, so I got to pack all my shit up. So now you get like a 3-hour operation because you forgot, a drill bit or something.
Yeah, I'll never forget this one job. So I do a lot of this art fabricating stuff, and it's interesting stuff. It's a lot of like armatures inside sculptures, and because the sculptures are all made out of fiberglass or 3D printed plastic, so I can't MIG weld any of it because like just any slag coming off of it will just burn little holes in it. So I TIG everything. And it's super like out of position. Like I'm usually inside a sculpture, and like I've got, I'm holding just the back of the torch, and I got the filler rod. I can't get my hands in with the filler rod, so I'm holding it like 2 feet away from the weld area. So I'm constantly just hitting my tungsten because the filler rod is shaking like crazy. So it's an hour from my house to get to this job. I go there all the time, and I'm usually pretty good, right? And then this one time I get there and I don't have the power cord for my welder. And I'm using a Square Wave 200, which has a 110 or a 220 power cord, and it's got that little twist lock plug. So I'm like, oh my God. And now by the time I get there, it's rush hour. So I'm like, so to go back to my shop and back to them is probably 3 hours round trip. So I'm like, oh my God, like this is like a 2 hour welding job. I'm going to spend 3 hours in the car, and they're right by a Home Depot. So I take a picture of the back of the TIG 200's, plug, because it's a regular standard, twist plug.
Yeah.
I go to Home Depot, and just like you said, I walk around the electrical aisle for 20 minutes, and I'm showing the guy the sticker on the shelf of what I need, and he's looking in the Home Depot app. Oh, we have 3 of them.
Where they at?
Good luck.
Yeah.
So now I'm just tearing apart the electrical aisle, looking at every box. Finally, find the plug in another box, like just a totally different thing. And now, then I have to make a cord and finally, obviously, get the job done. But it was like, what a lesson. I mean, like, I'll never leave the house without the TIG power cord again, because and lucky for me, that client is like a very close friend of mine. So for me to be so delayed, they weren't like, dude, what kind of welder shows up without the plug to plug in the damn machine?
Yeah.
Like, how embarrassing, right? And lucky for me, they were just like, oh, no, like, do whatever you have to do. Like, we're, sorry. I hope that this works out. But anybody else, I would have been mortified. I don't know what I would have had to make up an excuse, like, oh, I forgot to feed my cat. I got to go home. I'll be right back. It's like all the little things, right? That job would have been sunk, totally sunk. And I probably spent like $80 at Home Depot buying a freaking extension cord and a plug and all the other shit that I had to buy.
Yep, just because you forgot one little piece. That's why I've always done like mental checklists and physical checklists for everything that I do, whether I'm like loading up to go do a job or whether I'm getting ready to go camping. Like, I put everything, I lay it all out, and then before the event, like I'm mentally loading the truck in my head and like sort of grabbing tools and loading up buckets, and like I try to because I've been in that situation. And it sucks. You get out there on the job site and you're going to put in concrete anchors, and it's like, oh, I don't have the right bit size, or oh shit,
I don't have the anchors.
Yeah, I don't have the anchors, or oh fuck, the concrete drill is sitting on top of the desk. Like I saw it as I was walking out and didn't grab it. It's always in the back of your head. Like, and that's the funny thing is the part that you need, you always saw it on as on your way to get into the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
It never fails.
I use an app that I really like, especially if like anybody's listening and is thinking about the idea of the checklist. I use an app. Microsoft owns it now. It's called To Do, and it's free in the App Store. And what I really like about it is that it syncs to an app on your computer, and it's shareable with other people. So like I have like a constant running like Home Depot and like welding supply and like hardwood supply list. So like as things come up in just my general day to day, I know for a fact, I'm looking at my welding supply list. I need striker points, because I know that the last time I went to find some, I didn't have any. So it's like, okay, next time I go to the welding supply, I'll click on that list, and anything that's on there, I just check it off. And it's super helpful for me for like exactly what we're talking about, like job site, like, oh, I gotta, usually it's like 11 o'clock at night, I'm laying in bed and I'm doing the same thing that I'm sure you're doing, is I'm playing out the job in my head.
Yep.
And I'm writing a list. I'm like, okay, like grinder, welding hood, gloves, got to bring gloves, need a jacket. Like, do I have a grinder discs, level, all those different things. And then it's, I got to say from an OCD standpoint, it's very satisfying, like check off button.
I love putting checks in boxes.
Yep. And then when you're done, what I really like too is it shows all the things that have been checked off right beneath it. So you can go back and go like, wait a second, like, did I even bring this on the job? And then you look through your list, you're like, oh yeah, I actually did. So it's such a simple little thing. But for me, as somebody that's constantly in 100 different places at once, it's super helpful to just be able to check lists off.
Yeah, I use the Notes app on iPhone, and then that'll, I can do the same thing on my computer because it all syncs up with one another. So if I'm on my computer writing something out, boom, it automatically populates so that when I'm out in town or whatever, I can just whip my phone out, open the notes section, and everything's right there. I've got check boxes everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. My wife, I make my wife use it when we go like grocery shopping. She'll be like, "Oh, we need this, this, and this." I'm like, "Can you put it in the app?" She's like, "Seriously?" I'm like, because we have a shared like grocery list.
Mhm.
Because then it just makes it easier, right? Like if I buy the milk, she doesn't have to buy the milk. Like you always know what the other person bought, and she thinks it's like totally overdone, and I'm like, come on, like just do this.
Just work with me. Get in the system.
Yeah, get it in the system. Come on, they make these apps for a reason. So yeah, no, it's I think people underestimate how much work just doing the littlest job offsite is. And when I say people, I mean clients. Clients 100% underestimate how much work it is for you to pack all your shit up and go and work at their house.
Oh yeah, because they'll always tell you, oh yeah, it won't take long. It might take you like a half hour.
Might take you half an hour.
How long you been doing this shit? Like you've never done it. That's why you're hiring me. Yeah. Okay, don't tell me how long it's supposed to take, because I'm gonna get there and it's gonna be all screwed up. I'll tell you how long it's gonna take.
I'll drop off the equipment and you call me when it's done. I'll come back in a half an hour. Like
I'll just loan you my tools.
Exactly. I'll help you plug the welder in, and you can figure it out from there. I'll even lend you my hood. I got a really nice one.
Yeah, just make sure you bring your cord this time.
That's right. And some filler rod.
Yeah, exactly.
Never forget the filler rod.
Don't forget the filler rod. That's another one. And the right filler rod.
Yeah, I've done that before. I definitely accidentally grabbed the stainless tube when I meant to grab the mild steel tube before.
Yeah, it doesn't work out so well.
It's great. No, it didn't.
It looks good under the hood, but like once you lift your hood up, you're like, oh shit, why does that weld keep cracking?
Yeah. Or, oh, hey, actually, there's no argon in this tank. Well, that's great.
Yeah, it was argon when I had it last time.
Well, it's funny. Like one of the things, like, and like we talked about in the beginning, we talked about how like I have so many tools and stuff. So like this client in particular, I've gone there and go there so often that my redundant tools that are here, I just leave there. Like I had a small fab table here that I didn't really have a need for. So I'm like, you know what? Next time I go to do a job there, I brought them the fab table, and now it's just there all the time. There's an argon bottle that they have no business using it. They don't even have a welder. So there's just an argon bottle there all the time, just in case I get there. And I'll bring a bottle with me, but just in case I run out, there's just always a bottle just waiting for me.
It's always good to have a redundancies.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, it's like, I didn't ask them to pay for the fab table to keep it there. I didn't ask them to pay like, for any of the stuff that I leave there, but it's so much peace of mind for me to have it there, knowing that, I don't know, if I forget my gloves, like, I don't know, I'm particular about like my gloves. I don't know. Some people could weld with rubber gloves on or kitchen gloves and wouldn't care. But I like, when I'm TIG welding, I like to have a nice dexterous pair of gloves so I can like feel what I'm doing. So I like make sure like, okay, I keep a good pair of my gloves there, all that stuff. And that repeat work, I think, spending a little bit of money, spending a little bit of time planning, it really makes a big difference.
Yeah. I'm a stickler when it comes to gloves too. I like very task specific gloves. So like I have gloves that I'll use for like material handling. I've got ones that I'll use for grinding. I have ones that I use for welding. And I get the who the hell makes them? Ergodyne. They make like these little gator clips. And so I'll get them on, like you can get like a 6-pack of them off Amazon, and they're just like one clips onto your belt buckle, the other clips onto your your gloves or whatever. So I'll take them apart because they snap apart in the center, and I'll just put like little carabiners on them. So now like every set that I buy, now I have 2 of them, and then I just use the carabiner. So I'll put them up on my pegboard on my tools, and I've got gloves for every little thing so if I'm in my shop, I can just reach over, unclip the ones that I need, put them on, do my thing, take them back off, put them, clip them back up, and just keep going.
That's smart. Yeah, I definitely don't keep track of my gloves as good as I should. But it's so funny because like you have like those pairs that you like, and I have like a couple of pair of TIG welding gloves that are just the perfect amount of broken in, and I know them when I see them because they've got like a little stain on one corner. But it's like as hard as I try, they're constantly wherever I'm not is where they are. So like I'll have them like in my pocket. And I'll put them in my truck, and I'll leave them in the truck, and then I'm in the shop, and I gotta and this and that. And the problem with having as much space as I do is that there's plenty of space for things to disappear. And like I'll be TIG welding, and then I'll go all the way into the back where the bathroom is. And obviously, as I'm going towards the bathroom, I'm pulling the gloves off, and then like a dope, I'll just put them down on something. And then like a month later, I'm walking back in that room, and I'm like, oh shit, there are my gloves on the bender. Like perfect. My TIG welding gloves have been on the bender for the last month. Like, great. They're doing a lot of good there.
Yeah, I've done that quite a bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. There's always some sort of roadblock, some sort of speed bump. But
Yeah, I
at the
mean,
end of
but
the
you live
day,
and you learn, and like
all
you
good.
start to become more efficient at what you're doing, and that's part of the
Absolutely.
whole process is like becoming more efficient and learning new things, learning new skills, and just progressing forward. And I think that's the coolest part about like making things or fabricating things or repairing things and welding is you're constantly learning new stuff every day. Every time I build a new project, I'm learning new fabrication skills every time just to become more efficient. Be like, oh, you know what? Instead of doing that, I can do it this way, and you just become a lot faster at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of what I try to do in like my stuff is like today I bought the drop deck trailer and it needs a bunch of structural work and it needs like a pin on it is like shot and the trailer suspension needs to be redone. And I mean, yeah, I've welded and worked on a ton of different things. I've never rebuilt a heavy duty trailer, right? So, but my buddy Matt, who does that kind of stuff, he has. So him and I have already been like texting all day about like, all right, when can we get the thing apart? When can we work on it? And he's going to help me do all the things that I don't know how to do. And I'm going to get the experience of like, okay, now I have to, I mean, even just outside of fabricating, like I got to totally redo the trailer brake system. Like I've done that before. So now I'm going to learn how to do it. And for me, it's like the money that I spend on the trailer and the money that I'm going to spend on the parts and the time I'm going to spend working on it are going to be more valuable than just buying the thing like mint, because buying it, even if I bought it new, it would have cost me 5 times what I paid, first of all. And second of all, I wouldn't know a damn thing about it. If the brakes stopped working or the suspension seemed messed up or the wheel bearings got jammed up, I wouldn't know a thing. I would have to learn in the moment that something's already gone wrong. In this case, I'm going to learn everything I need to learn about this, every bolt that's loose or tight or everything that could bend or break. And by the time it's fully fixed, I'm going to be like a total expert. And then any problem that arises, any like noise I hear, I'm going to be like, oh, that's that bearing when again, like no problem, you can fix it.
Yeah, you know it inside and out because you built it essentially, well, repaired it from the ground up.
Exactly. And for me, like again, like I said, it's a great education for me and a great education for anybody that's interested, because I'm going to document the whole thing and everybody's going to have a chance to watch it. Some people are going to say, hey, this isn't for me, and they're going to click away. Other people are going to go, you know what? I am interested in this type of trailer. I want to see how this guy fixes this thing because it looks like a piece of shit. And when it's going to look great, so how's he going to do it? So I watch those types of videos all the time. Have you seen this guy on YouTube, Waldo Welds?
Waldo Welds?
Waldo Welds, I think is his thing. He built a gooseneck out of I-beam. That was like a big viral video that he did. He built a gooseneck from scratch. He's kind of like a mechanic, but does a bunch of welding stuff. He made a really nice aluminum flatbed for his truck. Like a lot of his stuff is very, very auto mechanic based. Like he'll buy like salvage Land Rovers and fix them. Like to me, like I don't really care about engine maintenance. Like I don't care about how he's going to fix this Land Rover. At least in my head, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But then I watch his videos because I'm just interested in seeing like how the hell is this guy going to get this thing to work? Like how's this guy gonna fix this seized motor on this, Mercedes, whatever. And I don't really care that much about learning about Mercedes motors. I just want to see the story of how he's going to like triumph over this challenge, and I hope people get that out of my videos.
I've gotten lost into YouTube holes many a times, just going on there to research something or whatever. And, the next thing you know, you're just watching some random shit. It's just fall down a YouTube hole.
Yeah. And that's the best part of it, and then, sometimes you find something that's like really great, really worthwhile,
Yeah. There's a lot of great content on there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I really found blacksmithing, aside from trying it, but like watching the videos of like Alex Steele and those guys, like seeing some of the stuff that they're able to make and then trying it myself. And like, for anybody that hasn't tried blacksmithing, it's so much harder than it looks on the internet.
It's way harder than
it
looks.
Oh my God.
I don't know how many freaking leaf videos I've watched and, like the stack of freaking leaves that I've got. I got more leaves on my welding table than I do in my backyard. And I got a fucking oak tree back there.
Have you tried to make a pair of tongs yet?
So I made a pair of tongs a while back, but it was at one of those events, so they kind of walk you through step by step. So it was a lot easier then. They're functioning, they work. They're not in my tool bucket because I don't want to use them because they don't work as well as I'd like them to. But they function. But yeah, tongs are friggin' those are hard to make.
I can't tell you how many. It's funny you say leaf videos. I can't tell you how many times I've watched the how to make a leaf video and how many tong videos I've watched, and I cannot make a leaf or a pair of tongs to save my life. Meanwhile, I've forged a pair of scissors out of a railroad spike. I forged a C-clamp out of a railroad spike. I forged some complicated things, but I cannot. I can't get the damn leaf down. And everybody's like, that's the fundamentals. Like, you got to do that first. I'm like, dude, if that's what I got to do first, I'm hopeless. I should just quit now because I cannot do it. It's hysterical to me.
Yeah, it's pretty fun to mess around with it though. And like it just like anything else. It's like I've never really picked up many things in life and just been a natural. Like I've had to work for it. Like everything that I do, everything that I learn how to do to a proficient level, I've had to work for it. I'm not talented by nature. So like I understand this whole process, and like that's the fun part of learning because I'm going to learn more of what not to do, along the way. And again, it's just going to make me faster and more efficient later on. But yeah, I mean, Alex Steele said the same thing. Like if you're getting into blacksmithing, make 100 of these first. It was a freaking leaf. And like that's what I started off with because like back when I was like 12 years old, that was one of the things I seen a blacksmith make, and I was like, that's freaking cool. I'm going to build one of these days.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was going to be 28 freaking years later. But it's coming along. Each one's getting better, so that's the goal.
Yeah, that's I mean, like I love exposing people to blacksmithing because to me it's like and I feel like a lot of people that I feel like have long I feel like people that have had long careers in the trades, especially like people that have come up and kind of like were exposed to it as a younger person, like most of the stuff that you learn is pretty black and white. Like, like teaching somebody how to weld, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and there's sort of an in between, but there's not so much nuance to it. But like blacksmithing, like you could tell somebody what's going to happen when they hit the hot metal 1,000 times, but then they hit it and it could do something completely different. So for me, like to me, blacksmithing feels like the last real unknown that like it will take me the rest of my life to get really good at.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Factors. Yeah. And like so many factors in like the shape of the hammer, just the surface you're hitting on, like all these different things, the temperature of the metal. And I really feel like for me, it's going to be something that I just want to do forever. Like I'm always going to want to try to forge something, different, more complicated. I love that there's so much access to the information now because like I would never have tried blacksmithing had I not seen somebody like doing it online or, maybe I got to see somebody doing it in person at like a Renaissance fair or something, but that's not the same as watching somebody do a step-by-step project and them telling you that you can do it. When you see somebody like doing a demo at like I said, like a kid thing, that guy's like a superhero, like I could do that. Like I would love to, but I could never do that. But then you get somebody like an Alex Steele, super approachable, and he's telling you like, this is easy, like you can do this. You're like, okay, maybe I can.
Yeah.
It's
like watching Jimmy DeRest on a freaking bandsaw. Like I seen him over there at the Good Land Fest, and he's just got like piles of scrap lumber, and kids are like just walking up naming random shit. And this kid's like, I want a sword. He's like, okay, I can do that. Like he doesn't draw anything out. He just grabs the board, zip, 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 put a little angle on here, a little bevel. Here you go, little guy. And 5 minutes later, this kid's walking around with a badass freaking sword, no dimensions, nothing. But I mean, like he's a whiz on that thing. But how many times has he operated one of them freaking bandsaws to get to that level? And that's the cool part is like you got to start somewhere. And like nobody starts as an overnight success. I mean, you got to put in the work. And I think that's what's really cool about it is it's okay to suck at something and keep working and progressing until you get better. And then once you get to that level, like pass those skills off to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's okay. I think if Instagram has taught me anything about the maker community in particular, and the internet is harsh to a lot of different groups, but I have always found that the maker community, it's okay to suck publicly and just share your experience. Because at least in the maker community where I feel like I kind of am, I see beginners coming to the group, the hive, for feedback. Like, hey, I just made my first knife. hey, I just made my first side table. And yeah, there's always going to be that like dickhead that's like, dude, go back to, waiting tables or, flipping burgers. But most of the people are going to say like, hey, you know what? Like, good for you for trying, good for you for, putting yourself out there and like trying to make a knife or at this year, we did the Catskill Mountain Maker Camp, in East Durham near Jimmy's place. And so a lot of people welded for the first time. And so many of them were like, man, you know what? This looks like shit, but I actually got it all to stick together. And they were posting pictures of these basic abominations of what they were making in terms of welding. But everybody on there was like, because I was screening the comments. People are saying like, wow, good for you. You finally got to try welding for the first time. Like, how was it? Like, oh my God, I love it. Like, it's like, okay, fine. That's encouraging. People are encouraged. It's really cool to see like people trying and getting some positive feedback. Like back in the days where it was only the forum, right? Like only like a woodworking or a metalworking forum. I feel like the support system maybe wasn't as good.
Yeah.
People hid behind anonymity, and there was a lot more, kind of internet hate. And there still is a lot today, but
they all migrated to Facebook.
That's true. And if you find the right community and you're genuine about your skill set and you don't try to look like an expert when you're not, I feel like people generally respect that and generally, it works out.
Yeah. No, 100%. So
great.
Before we get out of here, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, especially on YouTube, Instagram. I don't know if you're on TikTok or anything like that, but yeah, go ahead and plug all your various social medias.
Yeah, the TikTok is a funny one because I have a TikTok, but I'll pass on it because I feel like TikTok's the number, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can find me on YouTube at Make Everything. If you go on youtube.com/Make Everything, and then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Make Everything Shop. And you can see what I'm up to and see what's coming next.
Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come out here and chat about your channel and like your journey in the maker community.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to come on, and hopefully people keep trying to learn new things and keep trying to expand their skill set and use the internet. It's a great thing.
Keep putting out content, man. I'm looking forward to checking out your skid.
Yeah, it's going to be something. It's going to work for me. So.
Yeah, I want to see what you come up with. It seems like it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. That'll be coming soon. If the weather stays this warm up in New York for a little bit longer, then I'll have a skid before it starts snowing.
All right, everyone, thanks for checking out today's episode. Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast downloader app so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every Monday. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.